Drum set ergonomics. We're in a world right now where there are many courses and advertising and people pushing the idea that you have to work on your drum set ergonomics. You have to sit this way on the drum throne. You got to do this with your rack tom. And honestly, I'm part of this problem. But at the end of the day, we need to consider one thing. Are we setting up drums because people of status are telling us to? Or are we just copying our favorite drummers and trying to do the best we can with the setups that they've chosen that have worked for them for decades? Today, we're going to be talking all around ergonomics and how you should actually be thinking about it and remove any sort of mystification around it so ultimately you can set up a drum set around your body. Quickly, my name is Brandon Green. I'm a fitness professional who specializes in biomechanics. I've been working with professional drummers like you to customize their drum set and build their body so they can continue to do what they love for years to come. Stronger drummers play longer, and today we're going to talk about drum set ergonomics. Drum set ergonomics. So here's the thing. We can copy our favorite drummers. We can do all these incredible things to make our drum set look really, really cool. And in fact, you can see here, this is my Rototom drum set I've been experimenting with. It is 100% not rational for any of the gigs that I play, but I've been experimenting with it so I can talk to you about ergonomics and really kind of wild setups and making it really work for your body. If you look at this image, I've done a few things here to try and help you understand the best way that you can think about setting things up ergonomically for you. Now, when we talk about ergonomics, if you look up the dictionary definition, there are many aspects to make a setup, a desk setup, or anything ergonomical around mental health, physical health, workspace. Everything has got to be perfect. But ultimately, it all comes down to efficiency. What increases the efficiency of you and the thing that you're doing? When we're talking about the drum set, we need to consider two aspects. We need to consider one, are things positioned in a way that it's actually efficient for you to create the art and the message that you want? If it is not efficient, it is going to be inefficient, so you're going to be limited in your ability to create, speak, and create rhythmic vocabulary like you've never had before. And then the other side of it is, are there elements where we have actual risk? Because truthfully, when I work with many of the professional drummers that I do, the number one thing that I hear that you would be surprised by of these top tier drummers is the pains, aches, and problems they have while they're playing these huge superstar gigs. And a lot of these come down to one, either conditioning, or two, the position of their instruments. So when we're looking at this, I have all these crazy colors on this page. What do all these colors mean? Well, in prior videos, if you've been around here for a while, there's a term I talk about that is not unique to me called active range of motion. Range of motion comes down to how far our joints can actually go. Passive range of motion is the motion that we get shoved into. So if I grab a door and stretch myself there. And then active range of motion is the motion that I can voluntarily go through. So if I keep my arms at the side of my body here, and I take this arm, and I externally rotate without moving anything else except for my shoulder complex, you can see I can bring my arms all the way back to about 85 degrees. This 85-degree position here, if you look, is actually the edge of the red lines, the furthest point on left and right in this image. If I stay here and I turn my arm all the way in and I make fists and I overlap just a little, I can turn all the way in so my elbows hit my body, and I actually have more range of motion available, but my torso gets in the way. My geometry gets in the way. This represents a full active range of motion from internal rotation, where I hit my torso, all the way out to external rotation. Now, this active range of motion is the amount of motion I currently have available. And if I were exercising or doing a physical therapy program, this would be great because I could assess this from one side to the other for symmetry, differences, sensations, and ultimately figure out the best way to move forward if I was trying to correct or fix something. If you're thinking about injuries and challenges that you might experience, no matter how you shake a stick at it, there's some research showing that visiting end range positions via different types of stretching and exercise can be really beneficial. However, visiting that end range at a high force many times over long periods of time can be risky. For example, you can probably feel this. If your elbows are at the side of your body and you externally rotate your arms out, there's a point where you turn out and things feel really good and there's no resistance. And then as you get to the end range, you can start to notice some tension across the back or front of your shoulders in these last few degrees. The full active range of motion is called your window of opportunity. What is the opportunity of motion that you currently have available that you can set up instruments within? I also like to coin the term, and I'm not trying to steal this from Nate, I promise, 80-20 ergonomics. What instruments do you play 80% of the time, and can we place them in the window of least resistance? So if I take my arms, and I'm here, neutral, and I turn in until I feel a bit of tension to hit my body, and then I turn all the way out, and like I told you before, I get to 45 degrees, it feels good. I get past 45 degrees, things start to actually get a little bit tight and tense. That actual end range tension is where I'm going to have a problem if I'm going to have a problem. So in this image, you can see the blue triangles are the comfortable, feel good ranges, no tension, no discomfort, no end range stuff. And then the red ones are where I feel tension and a little bit more discomfort. So here is my ergonomic lesson for you. What I want you to do is really, one, position your body in the most comfortable, relaxed position you can. Then move your arms and assess how far you can go, but then make note of those positions. Where do things feel really good to you? Do you like how it feels? And then where do things start to get a bit tight? The instruments that you play most of the time, perhaps the ride cymbal, perhaps a crash cymbal, your hi-hats, place them within the blue window, right? This comfortable, low-stress window. And then instruments you play 20% of the time, like perhaps the accent chinas or splash cymbals, place them at the more extreme ranges. Now, for this image is only looking at the one top-down transverse plane view. There is forward and back as well. But to make this discussion simple, this is a really good way to start. Place instruments in the blue zone that you play often. In the red zones, play instruments that you don't. Stuff you play 20% of the time. This is great. Every drummer, I've got one drummer working with who's in a huge metal band right now, which is super cool, and he's got the chinas really far away, as many metal drummers do. And he's telling me that when he plays in the mid-range, he's doing okay, and as he gets to the extremes, he starts to notice one of his shoulders. This is really important. Now, I want to bring up one other idea here. First and foremost, go back and listen, watch and look at the image, really make sure that this makes sense to you. But far more importantly, I want you to notice that both of my shoulders have their own window of opportunity. And if I have a problem with one shoulder might be a little different. Like my right arm might be able to go all the way out, and my left arm can only go to here before things get a little tight. So this could be specific to you if you have a rotator cuff or shoulder issue. The other side here is, depending on your gig, I want to position a bit of a defense, a rational defense, for learning open-handed playing. For most of us in most of our gigs, and I'll say jazz is going to be the exception because there's a lot of feel there, but if you play rock gigs, blues gigs, most of us are leading with our right hand. And if we're playing a traditional rock groove, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, even just playing that regular 4 on the floor vibe, I play as 4 times as many notes with my right hand as my left hand, which makes perfect sense. But the problem is, if I actually go to a studio or play a gig, my right hand is working a lot harder for a long period of time. In fact, 4 times as hard for most things, unless I'm playing more syncopated grooves, especially in that 4 on the floor scenario. What I want to suggest is, if you've ever struggled with your body or you're concerned about asymmetry, any of the gigs that you have, please try and spend a little bit of time actually learning how to play with your left hand. As you can see here on my left hand of my drum set personally, I have a ride cymbal just on the outside of my hi-hat, and I've learned how to play open-handed. Any of the simpler songs where there's very basic hand ostinatos and foot syncopation, I've learned to play with my left hand, so my left hand gets strength and endurance, but more importantly, my right arm gets rest. And that's the most important thing, is that if you actually are playing 4 times as many notes with your right hand, why would we not want to actually learn how to do it with our left hand so our right hand can get a little bit of a break? I'm extremely biased to open-hand playing from a health perspective, because truthfully, if you look here, if I've got these windows of opportunity that I've shown here, there's always one arm crossed over the other, and this limits what you can do. If you can actually learn how to even play the simple do-do-ga, do-ga, you can play that around the toms and things open up and you get some really cool syncopation going as you get this going. But more importantly, from a pragmatic perspective, it helps to reduce the stress on your dominant arm. It makes your non-dominant arm work a little bit harder and disperses the workload just a little bit more. In fact, if you've ever struggled with any shoulder issues, this is one of my go-to strategies. Hey, can you learn the thing that you're struggling with open-handed, and let's see if that makes a big difference. Ultimately, ergonomics comes down to anatomy. What can your body do? There are many different ways, like I've seen great book, like The Anatomy of a Drummer. That's a great name for a book, but I'd actually encourage you to think of it as the anatomy of a human, and then move towards the drums. If you can learn the anatomy of the human body and what it does and what is simple for your body to do and where the risks slightly start to increase, and can we choose to stay away from those risky areas so we can mitigate it and ultimately play drums forever. If you want to really get into my worldview, I want you to play drums forever. Stronger drummers play longer. Check out drummechanics.com and check out my Instagram page so you can get a little bit more info around this whole thing. Watch prior videos, because at the end of the day, this entire channel is committed to one thing: you creating art for the rest of your life. And if we can learn to listen to our body and learn to assess our body with individualized assessments and get away from how we think about other drummers, and we go, hey, Neil Peart did this, so I'm going to do that, then we can come up with some really cool art. Drum set ergonomics comes all the way back down to anatomy and you. Thanks for watching.